Do you want to learn how to get retired, stay retired, and enjoy your life to the fullest? This is the Retire Happy Podcast with certified financial planner professional Jeremy Finger. Jeremy will be your guide to happiness as he discusses the art and science of retirement, breaking down the complicated information to help you make good financial decisions without worry or burden. Now, onto the show.
Hello and welcome to Retire Happy with Jeremy Finger. Jeremy, what's going on?
Oh, Eric, just living life, trying to make people happy and live their best life.
Well, I'm telling you what, I know through experience, every time I get together with you, you make me happy. So
well, aren't you sweet? Aren't you sweet?
I just love this stuff. Hey, I know you brought a guest on the show today. Who'd you bring on?
Oh, we got a real treat today. We got John Diehl, who is with Applied Insights and has a lot of wonderful information to share with us today.
All right. Well, I'm excited to hear what you guys are going to be talking about. Go for it.
All right. Well, welcome, John Diehl. He's been with the Hartford for over 30 years, Hartford Funds and Applied Insights. John has led research with the MIT Age Lab and has actually been featured on CNBC and Bloomberg Television talking about retiree and the aging process and a lot of the challenges that retirees face. And we're really excited to have him on board. John, welcome.
Jeremy, thanks. It's great to be with you again.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us. So John, again, appreciate your time on the show here. Tell us a little bit about retirement today and all the things that you have learned with the MIT Age Lab and some of the things that retirees need to think about.
So Jeremy, it's interesting when you say, tell me about retirement. I think the one thing we need to understand is that the definition of retirement actually changes over time. So I want you to think about this for a second. In 1875, about 90% of men over age 65 were still employed. In fact, back in that era, the worst thing that you could be called was retired, because that meant that you were no longer productive. Someone would have to support you, so on and so forth. Well, we all know that times changed, and we began to see the Social Security safety net, if you would, that kind of help people think differently about the years after their primary career. And we saw a giant shift actually in the 1950s and the 1960s as I would say the luxury product market and the financial services market kind of teamed together to create this new image of retirement, one of relaxation. Think of Del Webb opening his first Sun City retirement community in 1960, which kind of redefined retirement as a time to relax and kind of kick your shoes off and go play some golf and, remain active. But Jeremy, what I will tell you is that retirement looks very different today. And it's because we think that it's because of longevity, right? That the retirement that was even designed in the 1950s and the 1960s was never really meant to accommodate people who were going to be living to age 90, 95 and beyond. And so to a certain extent, Jeremy, I think it's important to realize that the way most people think about their retirement oftentimes is based on what they've observed, maybe their parents, how they did retirement, or maybe some friends from past generations. But there's some danger in that, Jeremy, and that model may not actually fit the reality of today.
Oh, is that right? So, what are some of the realities of today that a lot of people or a lot of retirees have to make sure they address?
So I'll give you a simple one, Jeremy, right? The old model used to be that my wife and I would live on a farm. We would have a fairly sizable farm. And as we got older, we would begin partitioning off portions of that farm for our 8 to 12 children, right? Who would then take care of us as we aged. Well, we all know that society has changed. So there's still kind of this thought process that says, you know what? The home that I live in right now is going to be my home until, and I'll use the phrase, till they cart me out of here in a pine box. Well, the truth of the matter is, Jeremy, it may not be that simple any longer, right? As we live to later ages, what our research associates at MIT tell us is that if you're over age 50, you may actually move as many times as you did prior to age 50. You may upsize or downsize. You may want to move closer to family, or let's be honest, grandchildren. You may need to live with children or grandchildren. You may need the care of a care community as you age. And so just taking that one component, where am I going to live, is just one example of how things have changed, driven largely by extended lifespans.
Yep, makes total sense. I had a client in the office yesterday, and they had two homes, and both on the East Coast. They got two daughters, both on the West Coast, and they're looking at each other. What are we doing over here? So, and they don't know which home they want to stay in, or if they want to move to California. All these are the same things you're talking about, John.
And then you have all the particulars of how are we going to get rid of all that stuff that we've accumulated in two different homes, and thinking about maybe we're moving to a third home, right? So just the logistics sometimes is so daunting. But this is why, Jeremy, I think, and I know you know this because I know this is part of your practice. When we think retirement planning, we always go to facts and figures and numbers. And I don't want to say that that's incorrect, but it's certainly incomplete. Really, retirement preparedness comes first in terms of thinking about some of these future plans. And it's very difficult for us on our own just to say, I know people always say, well, tell me your hopes and dreams. Well, that's one thing. But when we sit down and really start putting some pencil to paper in terms of where will I be living, right? What are the things I'm going to be doing? What's going to fill all this additional time that I'm going to have for maybe the next 15, 20, 25, 30 years? Then the planning and the preparedness kind of comes together. And I think it's the holistic part of it, really envisioning what we'll be doing, and then taking a look at the dollars and cents to figure out what's the best way to facilitate this lifestyle as I go forward.
Yeah, actually, a lot of times people come in and they want to talk about the dollars and cents, not knowing that the larger picture is probably the most important, at least in my mind, because we need to know, at least within some realm of ballpark, hey, what is your life going to look like in retirement? What are you thinking in the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? And before we can really dial back into the methodology of the math, so to speak.
Well, and that's right, Jeremy. I often use the analogy of doing a jigsaw puzzle, right? So if I ask people, hey, let's say we were going to put together a jigsaw puzzle, what's the most important first step? People always say, find the corners, find the straight edges. Those are important steps, but not the most important first step, which is you have to look at the picture on the box, right? Once you know what the picture looks like, you can begin to assemble the pieces that you've collected so that image comes off. Now, I will tell you, some people say, if you look at the picture, that's cheating. I say, if you don't look at the picture, that's insane. But when it comes to our retirement, having someone help you clarify what the picture on your box looks like. And this is why, Jeremy, I know in talking to you, sometimes you're able to suggest things that people need to think about that they may not even be thinking about yet. When we talk about where are you going to be living, what are the responsibilities in your family? That's another one, Jeremy, right? When somebody considers, will you be called upon to be a caregiver? Now, you may be a caregiver for a parent. You may be a caregiver for a spouse. You could possibly be a caregiver for children or maybe even grandchildren, because as we live longer, we also see that family dynamics are much different and much more varied than they used to be, more complex, I would say. And so really taking a deep look and saying, when it comes to my retirement years, what will my family obligations or responsibilities, my family commitments, what do they look like? Because that may determine a little bit about where we're going to live, what we're going to be doing. Are we going to work? Are we going to stay retired? So on and so forth. Lots of things to think about.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you get the sandwich generation, hey, taking care of my parents, and then also maybe, helping children who are maybe struggling. And then also the dynamic obligations, like, okay, hey, I'm doing this for my mom and dad, but my sister isn't, and those types of dynamics. And also think about the next generation as well. Hey, if they're dealing with parents who, are dealing with estates that recently passed away and things aren't lined up properly, and there's a bit of confusion, it can really create some heartache. So there's all kinds of different things that may affect the peace of mind of someone who is trying to get retired and stay retired and live their best life.
Couldn't agree more.
Hey, John, what are some retirement myths out there nowadays that a lot of people may believe that may not quite be true?
Well, there's a number of them, Jeremy, but some of the biggest ones, you're going to laugh at this one, is that retirement means I'm not going to work any longer. And what actually we're seeing, and this is it's very interesting. What we're seeing is that there is an increase in the number of Americans who say, when we ask, what do you envision you'll be doing after you leave your primary career, your primary place of employment? And they respond, work. Now, when I say work, a lot of people roll their eyes. I don't mean work in the same form or fashion as the first 20 or 30 years of your career. Oftentimes, it might be using my skills and talents that I've developed over a career to help a cause, right? To volunteer, right? That kind of work. Or it might be, I really love what I do, but there's certain parts of it that I don't like. So I don't want to do them anymore. And maybe I want a more flexible schedule. And I will just tell you, Jeremy, that the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, has really changed the way that people work, right? The introduction of remote work, being able to do parts of your job from wherever it is you are, as long as you have electricity and a Wi-Fi signal. This flexibility is really coming into play because when you look at the labor market in the United States, I know we all drive down the road and see the help wanted signs on every restaurant you drive by. But if you're running a business where you require skilled workers, finding skilled talent is becoming more and more difficult because the baby boom generation, and now even part of the generation X, is retiring and leaving the workforce. And they're taking with them not just knowledge, but experience, right? Why we did things, right? And what we're finding is, and we're starting to see the trends in the data right now, that following kind of the receding of the pandemic, more older Americans are rejoining the workforce than any other age group. Now, prior to right in the beginning stages of the pandemic, it was older people, understandably so, who were leaving the workforce in droves. And now what we're seeing is kind of a reversal in that trend because, look, let's face it, financially, inflation is now an issue that those on a fixed income or at least on a retirement income need to be thoughtful about. But also there's this drive for talent. People actually seeking what I have, and by the way, willing to pay me for it and allowing me to do it more flexibly. So remember what I said about 1875 and how many people were employed after age 65. Then we went through a phase where retirement meant not working anymore. But Jeremy, I think this comes back to one of the most important things about this new era of retirement. One of the top things that we see people say is that the one reason that my retirement is disappointing because I've lost that sense of mission and purpose, right? Our occupation when we were working, like it or not, gave us a reason to get up every day. It gave us challenges and opportunities and the like. But in that leisure-filled retirement, which I think would be great if it lasted maybe 4 or 5 years, when it lasts 20 years, that loss of mission and purpose, the reason why I get up in the morning, the thing that I want to accomplish today, losing that can leave us kind of floating out there. So I tell everyone, who's contemplating leaving that primary career, everybody knows what they're going to do in the first 6 months of retirement. We're going to travel, we're going to spend more time with kids and grandkids. But I want you to think about 3 or 4 years out. What does a typical Tuesday look like? That's a challenging question. And so having an idea of the things that I want to be involved with, maybe work, maybe volunteering, where socially am I going to expose myself to other people as well as other causes that could really benefit from my experience?
100%, 100%. I've got clients who were working full time and making $200,000 a year, retire and consult and making $50,000 a year, and they're only working maybe 20 hours a month. I mean, it's a tremendous benefit for a lot of retirees out there because they have these skills that are in tremendous demand. They have the flexibility to work and live in almost any location, and choose to do the type of work that they only want to do, and give the rest to whatever company that they want that they're working with. So a lot of retirees are able to stretch out Did you get the most meaningful parts of their work? Obviously, put more money in their pocket, keep their mind engaged, keep their social network engaged in a sense because they're still communicating with the workforce, and also have a lot more flexibility with how they live their life and where they live their life off work.
And Jeremy, you mentioned it, so I want to bring up another one of these myths of retirement. And the myth is that I'll be fine because my family will take care of me. And what we're finding is, I don't want to say that your family won't play a very important role in your care, but oftentimes where family steps in are where things have to be done. So I need to get to my doctor's appointments. I need someone to listen in on those kind of things. But Jeremy, you mentioned the social network. And I think everywhere we're looking now, especially again, coming out of the pandemic, what we're seeing is that as people age, the social network really needs not only maintenance, but repair in many cases. The number of older Americans who say they haven't made a new friend in the last 5 years, the number of older Americans who say they have 3 or fewer close friends. See, as we age, think about it this way, Jeremy. Remember when you're younger, right? Maybe when you're first starting your career, your first job, perhaps you're getting involved with a spouse and your family starts to grow. It just seems that everywhere you turn, you're running into people at the soccer fields, at the school, at the activities, at social work events, things like that. We call those chance interactions. But what we find is over time, as we age, chance interactions left to themselves will begin to decline. And so what we need to think about are what we call intentional interactions. So how can I be intentional about getting involved with something where I'll meet new people and perhaps develop friendships and renew those friendships over time? Because remember, I said the myth was my family will take care of me. They will. However, what research is beginning to show is that your friends are actually a more important factor in healthy aging, because your friends will be there during times in between those doctor's appointments, doing things that are fun and refreshing. Friends are available to us. They go places with us. They're probably interested in the same things we are. We may share some things in common with them that, again, give us things to look forward to, activities to take part in. And so we have to be careful, because in today's culture, Jeremy, there is so much stuff online, on our televisions, that kind of tell us that we're okay to just stay in our homes and watch our favorite cable news channel 24/7 and tell ourselves that we have relationships with others through Facebook and so on and so forth. Well, that's great. And look, Facebook is great, and all those social media companies for kind of just, I don't know, passing time maybe, but nothing really substitutes for face-to-face empathetic human communication over time. And we think that social network, especially in an age where we're living longer and longer, maintaining that social network is of crucial importance to a fulfilling retirement.
100%. Not long ago, I was walking in my neighborhood. Lady stopped me and said that she's got a problem with her TV. Can I help? Now, she happened to be my neighbor a couple blocks away. I walk in, and no one's in the home. It's just her. She's 84 years old. I didn't know her. Now, keep in mind, fortunately I'm not an axe murderer, right? And so she needed help with changing the batteries or something on her remote and watching her shows. And she's like, my friend next door went to a nursing home. I don't know what to do. I've been here, and I could feel the anxiety. And just like what you're saying, John, the social interaction, she didn't have it. I was like, well, where's your kids? They live out of state, and she had like a bit of anxiety and fear about going into a nursing home or assisted living. And through these conversations that I've had with you and many other clients, you could tell that she's missing the social connection.
And that's, the biggest part of some of these communities is it's great that they offer healthcare and monitoring, and obviously we may need that as we age. But what people overlook is the social connection. I think it's because we just think, well, when we're 70, we'll make friends just like we did when we were 20. Oftentimes that doesn't happen. unless, again, we're intentional. Look, it may be through a faith community, it may be through a community organization, it may be through a charity, charitable activities, but somewhere you're coming into contact. And Jeremy, sometimes people are very hesitant. They'll be like, "Oh no, I don't think I would like that. Oh no, I can't see myself doing it." I tell folks, look, once a week, once a month, whatever it is, put yourself in an uncomfortable situation, right? Anything that's new is not going to be comfortable. But hey, look at it this way. If it turns out that you really didn't like whatever it was you were doing, at least you now know what you don't like. But in the meantime, you may actually pick up a few relationships that may be additive to your social network in the process. So again, it's almost a challenge to ourselves to think about activities or places. It's interesting, Jeremy. We've done a little bit of research into something called your third space. So think about it this way. For everyone, their first place or their first space is their family. That's where we spend a lot of our time. It's where we invest a lot of our emotional strength. Our second place is usually the workplace, right? It's where our coworkers and friends are, the clients that we serve, so on and so forth. But everyone really needs some third places. And the third places are the restaurants, the golf courses, the charities, the places where we go to interact with other people. And so challenging people to think about what is your third place is really, really important, because it's often those kind of third places that do bring, as I mentioned earlier, mission and purpose to the things that we do on a daily basis.
It's funny you say the third place. I kid you not, I had breakfast yesterday with somebody at a restaurant I've hardly ever been to, and they had these coffee mugs all over the wall, and it said, "Hey, don't touch these coffee mugs unless they're yours." I'm like, well, and I asked the wait staff, "Hey, well, what do you mean our mugs?" She says, "Oh, no. If you're a regular here and you want to purchase a mug, we'll keep it here for you." So, like what you're saying is that the interaction, they have a meeting place on a regular basis.
Yes.
That they're socializing.
The sad part is Dr. Coughlin, that heads up the Age Lab at MIT, recently wrote an article about how the number of pubs and cafes in the UK and in Paris have declined precipitously over the past couple of decades, because now those places aren't meeting places anymore where people stop by to sit down and chat, converse with one another. Now everything's so rushed. We want to go in, pick up our coffee, pay the bill, and out we go. And I think we're suffering a little bit from a lack of these third places where we get to meet, as you said, on a regular basis, maybe with a set couple of people, but from time to time, new people come in and join it. But it's those kind of third places I think we need to be intentional in terms of seeking out.
Couldn't agree with you more. I mean, if you keep rushing, you're rushing right into the casket. How about
exactly?
Yeah, how about stop and smell the roses a little bit? Hey, talk to your neighbor. Do something a little bit uncomfortable. And hey, this goes for the younger. This goes for younger folks too. It's like, hey, we also need to make sure that we're stretching our boundaries as well. So, tell me a little. Any closing thoughts or things that retirees may want to think about to get the most out of their life as they go through the aging process?
So, Jeremy, maybe I can help by giving people maybe a little place to start, because when we think about retirement, it's a long time, and it sometimes
we certainly hope so.
We
certainly hope so.
It can be kind of hard to get our arms around such a big concept. So here's what I tell people: no matter your age, no matter whether you're retired, been retired, just retired, been retired for 15 years, here's how I want you to think about it. Let's say you were sitting down to write a short story about what the next 5 to 7 years in your life would look like. Now, in order to write that short story, you're going to have to know a couple of things. One, you're going to need to think about who are the characters in this story, right? So who are the people and the organizations that mean the most to you, and why, right? So as we start thinking about the character development think about this as kind of clarifying that picture on our jigsaw puzzle. So who are the people? The second thing we need to talk about is location. Where does this story take place? Does it take place where you are now? Does it take place in multiple places? Does it take place somewhere different? What's the location and why? No story, Jeremy, would be worth reading if we didn't think about the adversity that may come into it. So as we think about the next 5 years, what might be some things that maybe I hope don't happen, but it could be kind of a wrench thrown into the works. Might be a health issue, maybe an issue with a family member or something like that. And then the reason we love those stories is what's the resolution of that, right? If that happened, how might I deal with it? How might I think about it? And so beginning to put these pieces of your story, and then obviously one of the biggest parts of any story is the overall plot, right? When these things start to come together, what should the next 5 to 7 years mean, right? What are some things that, I've really intended to do, but I just haven't gotten there yet? And why would I want to achieve them in that way? When we start thinking about that, our retirement years really is kind of writing a new story. What it's going to do for you, Jeremy, is it kind of breaks you out of the mold of thinking about somebody else's retirement, your parents' retirement, your grandparents' retirement, and kind of just falling into the flow of, well, I guess that's how my retirement's going to be. And it allows you to write a new retirement story. So again, the characters, the location, something that might cause adversity, the resolution, and then the overall plot. Big part of helping to write that story. And Jeremy, I know this is one thing that you do with your clients, because the benefit of working with someone like you is you've gotten to read a lot of these stories. You've gotten a preview. You think of yourself like an editor, right? You could throw some questions in there, or maybe throw some curveballs that maybe people hadn't thought about. And when I say curveballs, I don't just mean in a negative direction. You can make people aware of opportunities that maybe they hadn't even thought about. And so that can become an exciting part of the story. So that's what I would leave you with. I think mentally walking through some of these questions, some of these situations that are going to help prepare us for a retirement that may last longer than previous generations ever could have imagined is very important to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And the flip side also true, John. Hey, we may not be here tomorrow. So are we doing what we can today? And so when we lay it down at the night, are we saying, hey, we give it a go today as well? And what I do to that point, I kind of help clients try to make the most of their life and live their best life as much as they can. So when they look back on their life in the 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years into the past, hey, they can say they really gave it a go. So good thoughts here, John. Good thoughts. And I really do appreciate the insights that you've shared with us today to help people who are getting retired, staying retired, trying to live their best life, some of the thoughts and some of the questions they may need to ask themselves to making sure that they have a more intentional retirement.
Always a pleasure to speak with you, Jeremy. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's our pleasure. Our pleasure. Thank you very much.
Well, John and Jeremy, this has been fantastic. John, I'm going to throw down the gauntlet here. I was thinking about something as you were speaking. I'm really interested. I know that you're doing research and you partner with a lot of incredibly smart people that do research. With so many people working from home, it's almost that retirement kind of aspect where they're not going into the office anymore. They're not making those connections that they used to. I'd be very interested to see what the research says in a few years as far as, like, I've been working my own business since 2012, and my social life compared to my wife's social life, who goes to work every day, is way different. She has way more friends than I do. I'm kind of a hermit now, and I've got to break out of that. I've got to put myself into those, like you said, uncomfortable situations where I have to go out and meet people,
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see. So I'd love to hear from you in a couple of years, and I'll twist Jeremy's arm. I know it won't take much, but to bring you back and maybe see if some of the research has been done about, because of the pandemic, because of so many people working from home, if there is a shift in how people understand what those long-term interactions really truly mean, and how to be intentional. Because I don't think it's just going to be the retired generation. It's going to be people leading up to retirement, or who are maybe 20 years from retirement, that are kind of feeling that same thing that you're talking about. So it'll be interesting to see how people adapt.
I agree with you, Eric, and I'll tell you, we're already beginning to see early indications that it definitely will change things. So I'd be happy to come back in future years and share with you what we're seeing then.
That'd be great. Well, John, again, thank you so much for being on the show. Jeremy, fantastic job, man. I love this. I love when you bring guests on. I get to learn so much. Thank you so much for facilitating this. And of course, if people want to reach out to you, Jeremy, and say, hey, look, I do want to be intentional about my retirement. I do want to be intentional about the direction my retirement's going to take so I can be more fulfilled and happier, right? Retire happy is the name of the game here. How do they reach out to you and have that conversation to see if they have some things that they could change to have that fulfillment?
Absolutely. They can call our office at 843-970-1049, or they can email me at jeremy@riverbendwm.com.
Perfect. Gentlemen, again, thank you so much. And of course, our last thank you goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Retire Happy podcast with Jeremy Finger. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Jeremy comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. And we humbly ask that you share this podcast, rate it, and leave a review, as this will actually help other people find the show. Again, thanks for listening today. For everyone at Riverbend Wealth Management, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Retire Happy podcast with certified financial planner Jeremy Finger. If you have any questions, please visit us at www.riverbendwealthmanagement.com or call us at 843-970-1043. And remember, click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available.
Investment advice offered through Stratus Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor doing business as Riverbend Wealth Management. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision.